As I say, a deal that delivers on the Brexit vote.
The prospect of no deal on a managed, controlled Brexit really is very, very concerning.
They've had 2 years on this, and I think it's about time we got sorted and got a deal on the table.
Tens of thousands of people on sickness benefits will get backdated payments worth thousands of pounds. Another miscalculation by the Department for Work and Pensions.
It does raise very serious questions about the administration of the department runs the welfare state.
Who killed Jamal Khashoggi? We have the latest. How clean is your takeaway?
First thing I can see is a bait tray, which normally has poison in for rodents, and it's mixed in with rat droppings. That's rather horrible.
And before Donald Trump became president, the author of The Art of the Deal told us this.
I have already made the plans to move to Europe. My wife has agreed that we have to do it. We're out of there if Trump gets elected.
So did he. He's back on PM tonight. With the BBC News throughout the hour, Jim Lee.
Theresa May has arrived in Brussels, where she will meet EU leaders this evening to try to persuade them to support her Brexit strategy. The EU has urged the Prime Minister to bring new ideas to the meeting, amid concerns that the two sides can't agree on the key issue of the border with Northern Ireland. Today's meeting was meant to be the occasion when the remaining 27 EU member states gave the green light for a special summit next month to finalise the terms of Britain's withdrawal. Speaking in the past few minutes, Mrs May told reporters she hoped for compromise on the issue of the Irish border.
I believe it is possible, by working together, to find a resolution to that issue, and a resolution that ensures that we are able to move forward with the full package, with the future partnership as well. Considerable progress has been made since Salzburg. By working intensively over the next days and weeks, I believe we can achieve a deal that I believe everybody wants, and a deal that is in the interest not just of the UK, but also of the European Union.
The authorities in Russia say at least 19 people have been killed in a gun attack on a college in the Crimean city of Kerch. Most of the victims were teenagers. The killer has been identified as a student. More details from our Moscow correspondent, Steve Rosenberg.
Russian investigators say the gunman was an 18-year-old student, Vladislav Roslikov. During his shooting spree in his college, the Kerch Polytechnic, he killed at least 19 people and wounded more than 40 before turning the gun on himself. His motive for the attack isn't clear. In the wake of this tragedy, Crimea will observe 3 days of official mourning. Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine 4 years ago. Today, the Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed his condolences to the families of the victims and ordered an urgent investigation.
Tens of thousands of people on sickness benefits are to receive backdated payments averaging £5,000 after government assessors wrongly calculated what they were due. The Department for Work and Pensions says it is facing a bill of more than £1.5 billion as a result of the mistakes, which were made when claimants were moved on to employment and support allowance. The errors were first revealed by BBC News in November last year, but the scale of the underpayments was not known until today. Turkish investigators have entered Saudi Arabia's consulate in Istanbul to gather more evidence about the suspected killing of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. It's 15 days since he was last seen. Earlier, the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited Turkey to discuss the case with President Erdogan. The Turkish foreign minister described the meeting as beneficial and fruitful. Human rights groups and environmental campaigners have welcomed a decision by the Court of Appeal to free 3 men who were jailed after taking part in an anti-fracking protest in Lancashire. Judges said the prison sentences of up to 16 months given to Simon Blevins, Richard Roberts and Rich Loizu were manifestly excessive and instead imposed conditional discharges. The activists were convicted of public nuisance after stopping lorries entering a fracking site near Blackpool. Rich Loizu spoke to reporters moments after he was released from prison.
Today's decision affirms that when people peacefully break the law out of a moral obligation to prevent the expansion of fossil fuel industries, they should not be sent to prison.
Network will cancel this morning. The manufacturer of the test train, Hitachi, has promised a full and thorough investigation. An American billionaire has withdrawn his offer to buy Wembley Stadium from the Football Association. The FA's chairman, Martin Glenn, says Shahid Khan decided to pull out of the sale after finding that his bid was more divisive than he had anticipated.
Jim, thank you. It's 5 past 5 now. She's got an invitation to the party, but when she reads the invitation closely, it says that she is the starter, the appetizer, if you like, before her fellow EU leaders tuck into their main course and chew over their next Brexit options. Theresa May is in Brussels right now, holding a series of face-to-face talks before her moment of truth address to the EU summit dinner. First on her list, the European Council President Donald Tusk, who's demanded concrete proposals from the Prime Minister on how she plans to unlock the talks, which have stalled, of course, over the Irish border issue. Our correspondent Kevin Connolly is in Brussels right now. Kevin.
Yes, in every sense, Carolyn, not for the first time, something of a sense of déjà vu all over again here at the heart of European power today.
We deserve a final vote on the Brexit deal. We deserve a people's vote. And bollocks to Brexit!
Yes, fake Boris Johnson is almost as much a part of Brexit as actual Boris Johnson. The sound-alike was here in Brussels today, pressing the Remainer case in language that almost calls for a tea-time broadcasting apology. He is blessed with a pleasing baritone, though, a rare instance of harmony in tense times here.
We are better off together. We assure you that forever we'll remain Europeans.
In the world of real politics and real politicians, there's less applause, and things in Brussels are not so harmonious. Theresa May arrived having been challenged by the EU side to come up with concrete new proposals. She will face a huge task of persuasion when she speaks to her fellow leaders shortly, and she had this to say on the way in.
What I expect is that tonight we will be able to talk about the very good progress that we've made since Salzburg. Yes, there are differences remaining on the Northern Ireland backstop issue. By working intensively together, I believe we can resolve those issues. I believe we can achieve a deal. As I say, a deal is in the interest not just of the UK, but also of the European Union.
You'll have heard this before, of course, but it is the Irish border which remains the big stumbling block. The EU 27 believe that the UK has already agreed to that backstop, in which Northern Ireland alone would remain in the EU customs union until other arrangements can be made. Now, one possible way to ease the negotiations, it's reported here, would be to extend the so-called transition period, that time after March next year, when the UK would effectively remain a member state, but without a vote in rulemaking. A non-starter, says Brexiteer backbencher Andrea Jenkins.
Back in July, there was about 36 MPs and I who put forward a letter to the Prime Minister with our red lines, and that was one of them. I'll vote against that aspect of it without a doubt. I mean, they've had 2 years on this, and I think it's about time that, we got sorted and got a deal on the table.
Well, it seems like a long time ago now, but this October summit was once seen as a point where a withdrawal agreement might have been reached. It doesn't feel like that anymore. And we wait to discover over the next 48 hours or so if the EU will schedule an extra summit next month to create another opportunity.
Kevin, thank you very much. The View from Brussels there. Kate McCann is senior political correspondent at The Telegraph and chairs the Parliamentary Press Gallery. So, Kate McCann, you're closely in tune with what Number 10 are saying. We know that last time she met these leaders in Salzburg, it didn't go so well for Theresa May. What are Number 10 saying that they hope to achieve today?
Well, you're right about Salzburg, and it certainly came as a surprise, not just to Number 10, but I think certainly to some journalists who'd been briefed beforehand that that summit was going to go better than it did. I think for the Prime Minister this time, as long as nothing big happens, and by big I mean as long as nobody says we're not going to have a future summit, we're not going to have any more talks, this is all you're going to get. As long as the EU are prepared to keep talking, that will be a win for Downing Street, because they are convinced that with a few more weeks and a little bit more discussion and a bit more behind the scenes work, they can make progress on this deal and they can find some kind of compromise. But the question then becomes, who will the compromise please? Because Theresa May has got so many competing interests and so many different groups who disagree with all kinds of elements of her plan that pleasing all of them is going to be pretty much impossible, if not incredibly difficult for her.
Well, you're right. I mean, given how boxed in she is there any likelihood she could agree, for instance, to extending the transition period, as Michel Barnier has suggested?
Well, this is an interesting one because the Financial Times was reporting, as you say, that Barnier is open to the idea of extending this transition period. And the reason why this is interesting is because one of the biggest sticking points on the backstop, which sounds complicated but is essentially just an insurance package, one of the biggest problems with that is a time limit. Lots of Tory Brexiteers want that to have a specific end date because they are afraid if it doesn't, then we will effectively stay in the EU forever because there'll be no reason to leave it. What Barnier is suggesting is we could extend the period over which we negotiate this new deal, but that would have a limit in itself, so we would extend it for a year. So there would be a firm end date, but it would mean extending that transition period. Now, if you stay with me, what that means is there would be an end date, unlike in this insurance policy, unlike in the backstop. So at the moment, number 10 is saying no, we are not open to extending the transition period. Then an open-ended insurance policy on the Irish backstop, which could feasibly go on for a lot longer.
And of course, the question is whether agreement cannot be struck and then we're heading towards a no-deal Brexit. Now, from your soundings, are really within the cabinet, are they determined to avoid that, or are some now saying, look, it's pretty inevitable that that's what's going to happen if we can't reach agreement by December?
I think a lot of people still really feel that no deal would be the worst outcome, and that includes Brexiteers in the cabinet, because actually nobody really knows what it means. And there's still a sense that it can be avoided, and it can be avoided in a way that pleases enough of them for Theresa May to successfully win her deal and get it through Parliament. But this question remains, and if you listen to Labour and what John McDonnell was saying today at a press gallery lunch, he was suggesting, well, actually, it's not as simple as saying Theresa May's deal or no deal. We believe there's a third option, which is a general election, and that's quite attractive to quite a lot of Labour MPs and possibly some Tories, because they would quite like to open this whole thing up again, go back to the country, because effectively another general election, whether we like it or not, would be a Brexit election. It would mean